Hey guys, I'm FatBuddyCat, and this is my street legal CT70 clone. We might as well start right there. That is the ugliest spot on this entire swing arm. The rest of it, that ain't that bad. I tried to keep this weld in between the gusset and this metal up here. I didn't want to root into the swing arm bushing housing. Could have been a little bit better. Like that. Or, well, that one. You can see that one got a little bit ugly too. Same thing. I was trying to stay away from that housing, and, you know, I don't want to keep adding more and more heat and stress to this thing. Those welds are going to hold. They're not going to break. When I did this, I didn't do it just straight across. I broke it up. That's why it's so ugly. It doesn't just look like one continuous weld. It's because it's not. Same reason I didn't grind this down and keep grinding and grinding. I didn't want to make this surface any thinner or temper it any more than I had to. I should have come down with, like, I don't know, some sort of an angle, kind of like they did over here. But for all intents and purposes, if this thing does give up, I think it's going to be somewhere in this box section. On the Hondas, they don't have all that dip stuff going on. We don't anymore either, but they did. Alright. Where they go straight across with this band, they also go straight across with the box, so it's on top. If this cracks at all, I can totally repair that. The next thing I gotta do is get those bushings in there. Some guys use the genuine Honda replacement bushings that are the same as the ones I took out. There's a spacer, I gotta clean that up. I'm running these hard plastic ones. I think somebody called them Delrin. I'll have to look into that. But, you know, is what it is. The argument there is that with the type that has the races, the metal and rubber ones, you have the metal on the inside race, and when you put the thing on the bike and you're torquing it together, then you are pushing from one race against this spacer piece, and then the other race, and then whatever is on the outside of that between the actual swing arm and the mount on the bike. I say whatever's between because some guys add washers. I don't know if we're gonna have to. We might. I mean, the way this works, the bushing doesn't move. All right, the swing arm bolt pivots inside of the bushing. if this is pressed up against this, and it's pressed up against the other one, and it has a few washers in between, it ain't gonna matter because it's not like they spin anyway. It's stationary, dude. Let's see what happens. Now that's a rubber hammer. This made quick work of that bushing. I didn't get much resistance, but it's also not gonna just fall out. I'd have to bang it out. Hopefully where these are plastic, if they begin to wear, it should be fairly easy to swap out. Definitely easier than that other malarkey I was up against. I'll drop that spacer in there and give the other bushing a few wraps with the power drive, and it'll be time to mount it up on the other bike. I'll take the swing arm off. I think it's going to be the exact same procedure. Once I have them off, I'll get the other one up on the workbench and we'll do a little comparison. I know. Get over it. The Amigo swing arm came off exactly the same. All the tools anyway. Good old torque pipe and all. The difference here is in the hardware. The bushings in the shock stayed in place, and the cotter pins did not disintegrate. So I'll be able to reuse those or take them down to the hardware store to catch some freshies. There's a little bit of rust on the pivot for the brake armature, and I believe it's coming from this arm itself. The one on the life fan is chrome. It's a little more heavy duty. I don't want too much chrome on my bike, so I got a spare if this one is in despair. The swing arms are surprisingly different, even though they're sort of the same. I'm stripping this one down. I took the passenger foot pegs off. We're not going to have those on the red one. I'm going to give it the super clean treatment, and then we'll investigate a little bit further. The first thing I noticed about this green swing arm that came off the Amigo is that it weighs about half as much as this tastefully modified one that I gaffed off of the life fan. It's not just the work I put in, it gets down to the actual base metals that they use from the factory. So this one is heavier on the outside band as well as the inside. Look how skinny that one is. I mean, they drilled holes through this one just so they could put these sweet passenger foot pegs, and went right through both bands. And I guess they kind of did over here, at least the inside one, when they set the anchor for the brake. It doesn't even look. Yeah, see the hole? You know how wide it is? They didn't even weld it from the factory. It's frustrating when you see how different two of the same things can be. Where this is thicker metal, this thing has been used and abused. And the guy bought this as a street legal and gave it to his kid, who put dirt bike tires on it so he could romp around the yard for X amount of years. Those studs don't look like they're sagging or doing much of anything besides sitting there waiting for me to put some sweet shocks on them. One on the left side of the Amigo is flared upwards. And I'm not sure if it has to do with that. Something's not quite flush. You can see a little bit of light underneath the light fan, but it's sitting flat on the bench. This one's not. It's not terrible, but something happened and it's not that used. We know that because these bushings tend to wear out fast, and these ones are still in good shape. I don't know how many miles were on the machine when I got it because the speedometer wasn't working. I'd say it definitely wasn't very many. Alright, there's where they go from the outside band onto the swing arm pivot. It's cute, but it ain't this. Let me get a grip on there so I don't drop it. Wham, bam, blah, jam. You know what I mean? Even if you really look in there, I'm on there. I'm good. Might be ugly, but like I said, this is strong. It's definitely got to be stronger than, you know, that. Would this work? If I continued down the not so rough path that I'm on, yes. If I was running it as a street machine only, I want to do a little more off-road, mainly like class 6 and dirt roads that get a little loose and funky. So I don't want something that could break or bend and cause issues if I'm, 20 miles out or so. So that's why we're doing this. Well, this is part of that. There's more too. Let me get this on the bike. The only place I could see us having any issue would be chain clearance on the left side. I think I saw a little mark right here. I'm not sure if that was chain rub. That could be frustrating. I am definitely not one to have fancy things. I might have to touch this up with a brush afterwards. I'm using the anchor that came on the light fan. I added the spring from the Amigo I think this goes down. I forgot to check. I'll have to look back at a picture or something. Up here at the bushings, the ones on the Amigo look like they come out flush. That spacer's in the middle, and I'm assuming they're whacked up against it. One of them's protruding slightly. Both of my bushings are in a little bit. They're pretty even. I'll use some washers to get out beyond that. That way I don't impinge my frame against the housing. It'll have the washers between it. As long as that's in the right position, this should bolt right on. Let's find out. I went back and looked at a picture. I was wrong. This anchor was upside down. So I minged things up a little further and flipped it over. It was a little bit of effort to get my two washers on both sides of my pivot, between the housing and the frame, while I was sending the bolt through like a shish kebab. I got him though, and it was worth it. I'm not even tight, and there's just the slightest little bit of play there. Once that's tightened up, that shouldn't be there at all. That would be completely bottomed out. You can see we're hitting on this tube. That's that pivot for the brake right there. If we are bolted to the shocks, we clear that pivot. Or our pivot. Yeah, our pivot clears that pivot. You see up there? Okay. Get almost a 1/4 inch. I'm going to keep on going. Both of my shocks are connected and my acorn nuts are tight. I just removed this rear portion of the side cover, 2 8mm bolts, and that's because I'm now going to upgrade my sprocket. I think that's a 14. They're either 14 or 15 stock. We're going to be going up to a 17. This is a popular upgrade to help get a little more top end out. First gear is almost useless. Second gear is pretty low and it winds out really quick and forth. This will help us with that, and it's also a greater circumference than that sprocket. The chain has to go around that greater circumference. That is going to lift the chain up and hopefully away from our swing arm. I didn't over tighten the swing arm pivot bolt. It has a lock nut on the end. I went ahead and threw a lock washer and a regular washer into the situation as well. Could put a little blue Loctite on there. But, you know, enough is enough at some point. It didn't fall off to begin with, so hopefully it doesn't now. I don't want to over impinge anything. It shouldn't matter anyway, as long as it's tight and it can't back off. Well, I don't say one thing leads to another for no reason. I'm at the point where I can put the rear wheel back on. So I went ahead and took the front wheel off. That makes sense to me. You just disconnect the speedometer cable, take your nut off the end, and push the axle through. It's got a disc brake, so the rotor just drops out with the rim. Here's what you get. There is a spacer that goes on this side. It insets into this rubber dust cap. That way, when you're putting it on, you don't have to handle it. It handles itself. The other side, you have this speedometer housing thingamajig. This is the actual mechanical aspect, I guess, that rotates with the axle, or the wheel on the axle. Yeah, I think that's the way it goes. Anyway, this spins around and turns the cable, which loosely translates what's going on up here. I think it only goes on one way, so it's kind of hard to mess up. I'm going to be replacing the bearings. I have 4 of these. I got from Bart Moto. Here's the new pillow blocks for the life hand rim, if I ever want to use that. And, oh yeah, we're going to put some new rubber on. We're going straight to the Bridgestone Trail Wings. Look at that. Alright. These do look to be a little bit larger than the tires that are currently on here. I'm going to mount the front one first so that we can compare it while it's inflated. Oh, now this is two kinds of slick right here. The hub comes off of the rim portion, and you have to remove it to release the two sides. It's a split rim. You see how they have the nut inset right there, and those little flangette things. So all you gotta do is work the 10mm bolt. There's 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4 from one side, and the whole hub comes away, including the rotor. We don't have to remove that. I do think we have to remove it to get to the bearing though, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I want to see some black magic on there. I think those things are going to be like that much taller and, you know, about that much wider. This is just fantastic. This means that these rims and hubs are very much interchangeable with the rims and hubs that I got with the Life Fan. This one is set up for drum brake in the front. I could swap the hub to a disc brake one, or I could just swap my hub right over like that. What I'm getting at here is that I could mount my street tires on these wheels. And run it. Change out these pillow blocks for the Sprocket here, and I'll be good to go. L convertible style. I dig that. Probably should have done this first. I'm now going to remove the cap and release all of the air from the tube inside. 4 more 10mm nuts and bolts. And now we're ready to split the rim. I'll push the valve stem through. And I think I just have to pry them apart to break the bead. I just used my hands. I pushed down on the tire and reefed up on the rim. It's going to take 2 hands to get that one too. Just in case, I'm making reference as to where the valve stem is in relation to the rotation of the tire. That way I know it goes back on the same side it came off. This tube should pull out. I actually didn't even think that was going to be an angled one. Oh, still got the air in it. Still smells brand new. We're going to replace it anyway. Deflated and side by side, they do look a lot closer in size. You can see looking towards the rear there that the trail wing is indeed going to lift the rim. It is a 4.0, so this is a 410, and the street tire is a 350/10. It might be a coincidence, but it's probably not. I tend to stick with places that sell quality parts. These tubes came from Bart Moto as well. They have the correct valve stem. They're a nice heavy duty rubber, and they're the correct size for these Bridgestone Trail Wings. I'm going to put a little bit of air in one, and then I'll start stuffing it inside the tire. Having just a skosh of air in there helps me keep the tube more uniform, so that I know it's not twisting as I push it down inside. If it didn't have that air, it would just be like a flat, round snake that could coil around. Okay? There's no way that it's twisted now. It's just extremely flat. So, I'll add a little bit more air. Again, not a lot. Oh, and the rotation doesn't matter on these. Couple pumps. That's all it takes. That tube is just a little bit firm. What I'm looking for is that I don't pinch the tube in between the two sidewalls of the tire when I bring the two halves of the rim together. I'm going to start with this side. I'm going to place it over the valve stem and then twist the cap on. That'll sort of hold it in place. I'm still working the same side. I haven't started the other half yet. Take a little soap and water, and I'm going to place it around the bead. I'm going to try my best to get as much of that bead set on this side of the rim before I bring the other side into the equation. I think that's pretty cool. You can see the valve stem going straight through the rim. I have that side pretty much set all the way. Now I'll mate it up with the other half. Just gotta line up the holes, and I'm going to start with these 4 nuts and bolts. All the time being careful not to pinch anything. A little bit of soap and water on the other side. These nuts and bolts are just finger tight, nothing serious. I'll flip it over, check on my valve stem, make sure I'm sitting nice and natural. It's centered right there. It's not, fighting its way to the left or the right. I don't think the tube's twisted. Now I'm going to introduce the hub. I'm not sure if it's easier to do the bearings with or without it attached though. I'm going to take the rotor off and look a little bit closer at that. See if there's a ring or something holding that one in. There's a spacer in between the bearings. I just used a screwdriver and pushed it to the side. Now I'm going to try to get in there with a piece of all thread and I'll tap that with my hammer. Try to send one bearing out the other side. Once one is out, the other one should be a lot easier to get at with a more blunt object. That wasn't too bad at all. I used my all-thread ramrod to get this loose, meaning it pounded a bearing in one direction that allowed it to move freely. So once this could jiggle around, I just tilted it slightly sideways and I sent an old mini bike axle through. It has a more blunt end than my all thread, and I gave her the ramrod special. I did this side first because there's less surface area to recover on the outside race. The bearing literally doesn't have to move as far. Now that I have that big open cavity, I can get something like a socket, maybe a socket with an extension, impact style, heavy duty, whatever. Pipe, stuff it in there, hit it with the big hammer, send it right out the other side. This one is probably still in usable condition, but we're here to replace them, so that's what we're gonna do. I just grabbed what was close and I didn't hold back. Blew this thing right apart. Smashed the other side in and it still spins quite freely. It's a good quality bearing. I'll throw these out and get a couple replacements in there. Do not leave the seals come off, so I can't grease them. I just got to go on what's there. Made in Japan though, so this is the good stuff. You can barely see it. Before I get to knocking or even placing my bearings, I take a little bit of red grease and go over the surface. It has anti-seizing properties to it, so that'll make servicing this unit a little bit easier in the future. I'm going to start with this side. I'll put the bearing in and then lower my spacer down and then do this one. I made sure the bearing was nice and square. Well, it's round, so it was flush on all sides. You know where I'm getting at with that. Anyways, started with the rubber mallet. Make sure I went nice and easy, down about 1/4 inch. Then I switched to my 1-inch impact socket, and I used this edge here because it mates up real nice with the outside race of the bearing and doesn't make contact anywhere else. And then proceeded to tap it down with the ball peen until it was in place. Now that I have both sides finished, my spacer's in the middle, I'll take that rubber seal and I'm going to press it in just so it's flush-ish with the edge of the hub there. Perfect. A little spacer can go down there for now. Sweet. Flip it over, and that end is going to end up with the speedometer part. I'm now going to loosely attach the hub to my rim. Remember, these bolts aren't tight. These won't be yet either. I want to get everything on and aligned before I try to tighten anything. Everybody's snug. I didn't use any tools, just my sausage fingers. I re-wet my beads with soap and water, and now I'm going to add a couple more pumps. I just want the tube to expand so much that it can't squish in between the two halves of the rim. Feel me? If we put air in it, it pushes out against the side wall of the rim, and when it does that, it should push itself away. When the rim comes together, it can't pinch that firm curved surface. That's how I envision things on the inside anyway. I just tightened everything with the 10mm ratchet. It's not, fully torqued or sent home, but it's tight enough that I know it's not going to separate when I put some air to it. I'm going to start pumping it up, and I'm going to set both of my beads. Going real slow. Should be close. I just watched all the edges move over. I guess I could bust out the tire gauge, take it up to max PSI or as close as I can, and then bring it down a little bit too. Either my gauge stopped working, or I'm just running really low pressure here. Things feel fairly firm. Go a few more pumps, but I think I'm just going to have to go by feel on this one. The valve stem is good and firm. It's in the right position. I'm going to fully tighten all my bolts and then pump her up a little bit more, see where it goes, back it off, and call it good enough. I just tossed the rotor back on and tightened all three of those bolts all the way. This front wheel and tire is ready to install back on the bike. First, let's see what it looks like next to the back tire and wheel. That Bridgestone is where it's at. I mean, it looks like it's 2 inches bigger around you can definitely see the difference in the width. The knobbies, they're not overly aggressive. They're DOT tires. You can still ride them down the street. These are going to be absolutely perfect for some dirt road action. Man, do they look cool with the black and gray. Or silver, whatever you want to call it. I love it. Alright, now I'm going to do the rear. It's pretty much going to be the same as the front, except instead of removing the rotor, I'm going to remove the sprocket to do the bearing. The other side is just open where the brake goes inside the hub. Same exact thing. Ups and downs. Ups and downs. They always come together. The up is these awesome new tires that I just installed. I go to put the front wheel on, and here's the down. The speedometer cable is too short. A few inches. In all fairness, this wasn't even designed for this bike. It came with a kit, the fork kit for my Z50R project that I didn't put a speedometer on. So I know which ends are on here. I know I need a 39-inch cable. So I'm going to go ahead and order one. I'm going to have to take the headlight off when I replace that. If I want to ride it, I guess I could just zip tie this up and tape it if I don't want to do that now. But we'll see what happens. With the rear, that is. I have everything ready to go back on, including the rim with its new tire. Fresh bearings. Everything should be good to go. I have all my spacers and things. I think the only snag we could run into is going to be that chain clearance when I get there. Moving forward. Thank God I installed that 17.2 sprocket, I'll tell you what. I think we would have been hitting with the 15. We're at full drop right now. It can't go any lower than the rear suspension allows it. When I sit on it, the swing arm is going to go up in the rear, and as it pivots, it will bring the chain further away. We're about a solid ½ inch plus right there, so I'm cool with it. Now, let's see what happens if we upgrade the chain. It's going to get a little tight. I get these DID chains from my friends over at OMBWarehouse.com. I run them hot and heavy on my Coleman Pt.200X. I'm pushing a lot more power, torque, I'm off and on it, and I ride the thing like an absolute animal. This should be perfect for this application as well. If we look at it next to the stock chain, the links themselves, you know, they're a little bit bigger, but they're not terribly wide or anything. From the side, it is though. Let's see what happens. I say that a lot, but really, sometimes there's no other way to find out. I'm looped over my 2 sprockets. Here we go. Oh yeah, plenty of room. This DID gold on black chain has links that are beefier across the top. You see what I'm saying here? Like the side walls of the links are thicker instead of wider this way. And in my current state of affairs, that works to my benefit. Remember, when I sit on it, it's going to pivot upwards and it's going to carry the chain with it away from the swing arm. It's just good to know that we clear at all times. I just cut my chain and installed the master link. I don't have any tension set. Nothing's tight. I hit the axle bolt. That's as loose as can be. And we're not hitting. That spins like hot butter. That's just the brake anchor you hear spinning around and hitting over there. I haven't tightened that or connected it yet. We have really nice clearance up at the front of the sprocket. Oh yeah, primo. Now I'm going to hook up that brake anchor and then we'll get the arm on there. I had to add some plywood to get a little bit higher up due to the tires. I'm throwing a little bit of red grease at my foot brake pedal before I install it. I had some surface rust that transferred from the pedal itself onto this pivot. Took a little bit of the grease, worked it around, wiped it off with a towel, and now I'll get it all back together and it'll be good as new. I save random springs and things. All useful stuff. Some of it in excess. And really no rhyme or reason. Except for things like this. See that black spring? The one I had in there, or on there I should say, that's in there now. I think it was this one. It was too tight. And it was starting to bend one of the ends. Maybe it wasn't that one. Well, it wasn't in good shape anyway, so I just used one that had sort of a messed up coil where it was overstretched, but it's not overstretched for this. It's actually a lot smoother than the other one was. Once we turn the bike on, I'll be able to make sure that the brake switch is being toggled by this secondary spring. Speaking of springs, you remember this one back here on the swing arm? That controls the inward and outward tension of this brake anchor. Alright, it pivots off the swing arm and comes down. So without that, it would kind of just be wiggling around and vibrating. I have my bolt, a washer, a nut, and somewhere a still usable cotter pin. I'll get that put back together now. I think when you're setting the tension, it's a 1/2 inch of free play at the top when the rear wheel is off the ground. It might go a little more. No, I'm going to leave it right there. It's a new chain. It's probably going to stretch just a little bit. Not much. It is fairly high quality. I'll give it a ride around. Worst it's going to do is scratch up the paint on this wicked sweet heavy duty swing arm here. So, you know, I'm not overly concerned about it. It looks just amazing. I wish it was the old red. It had some age to it. But don't worry. We're going to make this pop. Oh yeah, I almost forgot to check this cover. I guess technically you could run without it, but where I don't have any sort of chain guard whatsoever, this is probably a good thing to have. The guy before me already did some clearance work. I just want to make sure that the chain isn't touching that somehow. My first time looking at it. Okay. I can see back there. We're cool. Way down here. Yeah, buddy. To fully embrace the red on this bike, I'm using little accents here and there. I'm trying to be classy about it. Taillight's red, swing arm's red, and red on some stickers, pre-filter. Why not the grips too? I scored a set of pro tapers when I picked up a pit bike and a 125cc engine. The left one, for some reason, it's not going on very tight, so I gotta figure that out. And then over on the throttle side of events, I got the tube off, but the grip seems to be stuck on there pretty good. I didn't want to cut it. I try to save everything I can. Even if it doesn't have value to me, it's probably good to somebody else. I've never used this. I always just use WD-40, believe it or not. Might need that for the left side. For the right side, I think I just got to get this grip off the tube and slide this one on. Unfortunately, our grip did not make it through the surgery. Dr. Stanley had to make an incision, and there was just no coming back from that. This grip slid right on with a couple squirts of WD-40. Right down the gullet. Squirt, squirt, slide, slide. It's not moving around. It's not coming off. This side is still moving. I haven't tried the Pro Taper glue yet. I think it's too loose for the WD to get in and set up. When this sets up, it actually adheres. Pricey stuff. This came with the grips, it came with the bike, that came with the 125cc engine. I think I ought to give it a shot. I don't have the best track record for it, but I followed the directions the best I could. I gotta slide this thing on super fast. Alright. And it's supposed to bond within 10 to 25 seconds. However, there's all sorts of warnings on here. And it says like I think it's on the other package. It's like 5 seconds. This stuff can glue your fingers together, so yeah, right there. Eye irritant, bond skin in seconds. I thought it said 5 seconds somewhere. I don't know. Either way, I don't want to mess with this stuff too much. Yeah, I think it's getting there. It's been about a minute. Feels like it's stuck down here and here, but not quite, like right there. I'm sure it'll cure up and figure itself out. It looks pretty rad. The seat height definitely changed. Again, because of the tires. Now, the only thing I think I gotta do is replace my speedometer cable. There's just 3 screws holding the headlight into the bucket. They're on that ring, the little flange. Alright, so you take those 3 off, the headlight comes off. You got all these wires to contend with, and all we're after is that end of the speedometer cable where it twists and tightens to the back side of the speedometer. I'm getting in there with a pair of pliers to loosen it. I'm probably gonna have to do the same thing to tighten it. It's gonna come up through this hole in the bottom when we reroute it. Hopefully I can get it back up in there without taking this whole thing off. Alright, safe to say that 39-inch cable is definitely going to get the job done. If you pull on one end, I think it's this one, then the cable on the inside can come out. See how they include that washer underneath that crimp stop, whatever it is. If we push that back down in, it can only go so far. This end doesn't have that. So you could pull this back through and leave that conduit in place. That has a guy thinking that you might be able to rethread the whole thing without removing both ends. This would be the end I didn't want to remove, or I wouldn't want to remove in the future if that internal cable were to sever. I guess it would be worth a shot to order a new one. You get the whole unit and then just try to replace it. So I'm going to set it in a manner that this is on the bottom down here at the hub, and the side that pulls out is at the speedometer. If the cable breaks, I then just detach this side, yank it out, sleeve the new one in, and then reattach this side. I started at the hub, that way the cable wouldn't fall out. And then I do have the speedometer attached. It's tight, everything's ready to go. But boy, oh boy, is that long. I don't know how else I can reroute that. I don't think it's supposed to cross over to the other side. There's that thing on the fender, but I believe that was for the brake line when it was closer to the tire. Alright, so maybe something like a 37-inch would be better. Somehow I'm going to make this work. I don't want to kink it, but surely a zip tie or two would help. I'll get the headlight back in and see if I can work some kind of magic here. Tricky. Okay, I think I just did something here. I disconnected the cable from the hub, pulled it back through so that I was just running from the speedometer out of the bottom of the bucket again. This time I went over the bottom clamp for the suspension right here, so it goes past the neck and above the portion that compresses. It can't get caught up when you turn or hit a bump. It goes around the bottom of the neck under the frame with a nice gentle loop. It comes back under the frame and around to the right side and went through that hook that they have from the factory. And then down here to the hub. That's much better. I ate up about 1.5 inches, 2 inches of slack probably. I'm attached at both ends again. Now I'm going to go back to where I came under the frame initially. I'm going to recover a little bit more slack, and then I'm going to set a zip tie up here, keeping this portion tied to the headlight frame. So it's going to be attached right there, up underneath. I ran a second zip tie right around that bundle of cables going through that hook. We have a clutch cable, so that's nice and rigid like. And I think the other one, yeah, it's the throttle cable. It's not going to hurt them, but where they're attached at both ends and they're not just flopping in the breeze, they should help keep this one in place. Alright, I'm going to cut the ends off and I think we're done with it for today. I can't wait to go for a ride and try out all these new parts. I think this combination is really going to make a difference. I just have one more mini bike I have to build before we do. Have a good night, guys. Thanks for watching. And I'll catch you on the next one.